Hello YouTube, this is Coach Gleiser again, and this is hopefully going to be my last video on this subject matter of rotational hitting, the how. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and get into it. I wanted to first of all go over a couple ways of looking at this other than I've described it so far. Okay, one of them, what I like to use this as a lean and sit. Okay, when I go into my load, it's kind of like I'm leaning and then I just sit back. Lean and sit, and this moves your center of gravity forward an inch maybe, and then back an inch, and that's pretty important. Another concept is the heave ho. You know, if you imagine that you're gonna throw a heavy weight up to the top of a barn or something, hay bale or something, you do this. That's kind of the same movement. I mentioned earlier the skip. Skipping a rock across a lake is a lot like the same movement. Okay, and I mentioned that in my other videos, and if you haven't watched my other series from several years ago, seriously would recommend doing that. Another way of looking at this is you're kind of moving your weight around the bat, and what I mean by that is when I'm here in full load, I feel like I'm ahead of it. Now, when I decide to swing and my lower half goes, I feel like I'm behind it right now. And getting behind it, you're kind of moving your body around the weight of the bat. And that's another way to look at it. And that lean and sit, that helped a kid become a really good hitter in 1 year. He's like, oh, I can do that. Ended up hitting, I think his slugging percentage went up 220 points. So it can help. Different ways of viewing this or explaining it can help. Now, some batting practice considerations. If the forward swing is just a reaction to the load, if the forward swing is just a reaction to that, then your mental content in your practice should be centered around getting this movement right. Having your foot torqued in, being solid on that rear knee, building up that pressure, dropping in like you're gonna shoot a free throw on your front leg. And what I did is we would do like a phantom drill and be in the batting cage or outside the batting cage and just pretend you're gonna pitch, and you don't even need to throw it. What you're looking for is this, getting ready at the right time, and employing all the requisite skills that we've gone over and over already. Also, on deck tracking, nothing irritates me more than seeing a player on deck not tracking the pitch. Pitching. If I see that, just start running. All right. I mean, that's something that you don't have a lot of time, especially at the high school level. You got about 2 months, and you have to utilize every single thing you can do, and that is something that you can do every time on deck. I mean, practice getting that load, timing, and it's going to help you hit, and it's also going to ingrain those movements. As far as drills, real good way to feel this connection, and I call this the wag the dog drill, is just to stand there, try to relax, and just move the bat back and forth. And what you'll see is when my back goes forward, my front knee comes a little forward, and my back goes back, my back knee comes a little forward. And that connection, feeling that connection, is a huge part of it. It's massive. It's very important. This sit and spin drill. Let me show you this real quick. I've got a little chair here. All right, and I can sit down and I can move on that chair, and that spinning, that will also establish that connection. See how my bat goes forward? Back. Really good way to recognize that movement is just sitting down. Um, pendulum drill. Now this is a drill that baseball players are very traditional minded, and if they see something that they've never seen before, looks kind of funny, that they're just going to ruthlessly ridicule it. And this is one of those things. So you can teach your kid to do this, or teach your players to do this, and make sure that they practice it. But what it is you're just putting the weight of the bat or a weight, something that moves like a pendulum, right at your center, and then you're moving your legs to move that pendulum back and forth. And what it does is it starts to unlock this V8. You have a V8 down here. Not a lot of guys know how to use it. They're trying to hit with this little 20cc gas trimmer mower on the back of their arm here, their tricep muscles. But they've got and a lot of it's just because they haven't unlocked this V8 they have down here. It's all connected, but they don't have the coordination. This really helps out with getting that coordinated movement and getting those cylinders down there unseized. Core ball. I don't have my core ball because my kid thought it was fun to put a pencil through it. But if you can imagine laying on your back with your knees at 90 degrees, bent at 90 degrees, core ball's right between your shoulder blades, and just going back and forth on your back. Now the core ball allows you to get a lot of separation between your lower half and your upper half, and it also teaches how strong you are. And it also, of course, teaches coordination in that movement, which is very important. Cross training, skiing is awesome to develop these core muscles. Rollerblading, really good. Rollerblading is awesome. I mean, it totally develops your core muscles. That opposed to weight training. Now, I think I mentioned earlier, in college we just did tricep training, and it's like, well, we don't, you're not really even using your triceps when you're hitting, and when you're running, and when you're throwing. So it's almost like we were training to, get in fights after the game or something. And for me, what it resulted in is I ended up putting about 15 pounds of meat on the top of my frame, and it slowed me down a step probably. So that's also a consideration. I also thought maybe my shoulder had problems because I was in the weight room all the time. I was benching 350, 360, and I didn't need it. You don't use those muscles, so it's just it's just ridiculous. Okay, so basically wrapping this up, and from a coaching perspective and from my own personal perspective, what I've seen is a lot of the coaching problems as far as not understanding thing one about what good hitters do to be good, and that has a lot of ramifications. I see that there's two basically important teachable, improvable skills involved in baseball. One, of course, is hitting a baseball, pitched baseball, and we've talked about how to improve that. We have 100 years of history of great hitters that have, give us plenty of good examples. And pitching and throwing, making sure you have the same, there's separation in hitting, and that's very important, but there's also things in pitching that are extremely important. So a coach, not knowing anything about those two particular important skills, is just ridiculous. I mean, I was told when I got to Gonzaga, I was told, well, you should know this. You should know this already. And I'm like, well, why do major league teams have hitting instructors and instructional leagues and all that? Well, I don't think the argument that they were making stands any kind of test. And to kind of prove that, the head coach at Gonzaga at the time, Steve Hertz, I went back and looked at his record, and he had like against Division I opponents, his league, his caliber teams, he beat up on NAIA schools a lot, but against Division I, he's like 300, around 350 and 500. So, I mean, the point I'm trying to make is it behooves a coach to have some kind of knowledge of how these two important skills in baseball are actually executed. Now I wanted to give a couple little, I've already done that. As far as the load, I haven't really done this, but I think that the load, if you can visualize it as, if you're getting ready to spin this cylinder, if I'm getting ready to spin this thing, the load is this. My hands, wrapped around, and the spin is the forward swing. So I think that I haven't really talked about that, but when you're getting down there, what you're doing is you're just getting ready to release that cylinder. Okay, spin that cylinder, and I think that's a good visual image. One more thing against these skills, and this is another reason why coaches need to know what they're doing. These skills come and go, and I'll give you an example. A few years back, I was cruising through the channels, and we're in southern Idaho. We're pretty close to Brigham Young, and we get the Brigham Young channel. And I look on there, and hey, Gonzaga's playing BYU down in Provo. And I turn it on, I watch the game, and Gonzaga had a player that had just a massive game. 3 home runs, a double, I think he might have had a single. He had close to 10 RBIs. And Gonzaga just pummeled him. And I thought to myself, well, this is good, because some of my players, are Mormon, and they really worship BYU, and this will give me more street credibility because I went to Gonzaga, and they just pummeled the hell out of BYU. And plus, this kid, I think his name was Cameron Edmond, his swing was absolutely perfect. And I'm like, man, this guy. Check out baseballreference.com. He got, I think he did play professionally for a couple seasons. And then I looked at his Gonzaga records, and he had 3 home runs in this one game against pretty good pitching against BYU, and he didn't hit but 5 or 6 or 7 all year, and I'm like, kind of scratched my head. How the hell is that possible? Well, the point I'm trying to make, and I'll use another example, is that sometimes you do these types of things by accident, and you don't know what you're doing, but it might result in a massive game. Now, my own example, one of my last games at Gonzaga, the birds were chirping, scented lilacs in the air. Well, whatever happened, I think I actually, tuned into this type of thing, and the hand load and everything, rotational. It had to have been a rotational swing, and I hit a 500-foot plus home run. I mean, it's an absolute bomb. So the point I'm trying to make is sometimes players can just accident across this mechanism, and coaches knowing about these mechanisms can actually get those like accident type games to be in more of a permanent basis. And that's going to make, this Cameron kid, he hit 3 home runs in one game, and he hit 6 or 7 all year. And so there was something that he was doing that particular day, and there was something I was doing that particular at bat when I hit a 500-foot home run that needs to be kind of known about. And that's one of the primary purposes of me doing these videos to begin with, is I really wanted people to know that, hey, there's a problem with coaching. You got some coaches that don't think they need to know anything about these things, and you have a lot of other coaches that are actually teaching the wrong thing. They're teaching kids to use their arms. So that pretty much wraps it up. Again, if you want to donate, you can go, you look in the blurb, you get my PayPal. If you want me to do swing analysis, you just you got to get in contact with me, and I'll let you know, the ins and outs of it, what you need to do and whatnot. Okay, thank you very much.